I think I see it. So we are now streaming live on the YouTube channel. So, so with that, the meeting is called to order, and I will ask staff to call the roll to confirm the quorum.
Carol Singer.
Here.
Stella Weatherspoon.
Here.
Matt Pease is absent. Beth Needle.
Here.
Jim Cervantes.
Here.
Sarah Blumenfeld.
Here.
Susie Kelly. Oh, she's an attendee. Thank you. So Susie Kelly is present. Christine Rasmussen.
Present.
Chris Lee.
Here.
Planning Commission Chair Anna Radnich.
Present.
And the Mayor Geringer is excused, but we have Vice Mayor Enduri is present. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We've got the staff report included an agenda. I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda so we may proceed. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Carol. Our protocol is to move ahead with just the motion and not do a vote. So meeting will continue. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I do note that we received one item of public comment earlier relating to the EIR. Maybe with this, I'd like to see if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda. And with that, Renata, I'll leave to you to see if there's someone who would like to make a comment on something. Again, this is not for an item on tonight's agenda.
If you would like to make a comment, please use your raise hand function at the top of your screen. There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay. And with that, we're going to move to the housekeeping portion of the agenda. I thought it appropriate that we start off with the acknowledgement of the loss of one of our members, Don Jenkins. And there are many of you who worked more with him over the years than I have, but in the time as the chair, I got to know Don a bit. We walked through the downtown together, and I was just amazed how he knew the story behind every parcel we walked by. And he really, truly brought a lot to this community. And when you look at everything he did, I honestly think of him as Mr. Lafayette in terms of the scope of everything he was involved with. And, you know, someone in Rotary, I don't do the Sunrise Rotary because it's too early for me, but, you know, he's really epitomized, I think, what Rotary is about with the whole concept of service above self. And Don was very special and will be missed. And I don't know if there's others who'd like to make a comment, but again, I think we just need to acknowledge the loss of an individual who meant so much for this community and this committee and his family. Truly will be, he will truly be missed. So I'll pause there. Any other thoughts or reflections? With that, okay.
Well,
Chris?
Nobody else wants to. I knew Don's name before I met him, and I met him through Gpac. He is the epitome of like the civic-minded person from a small town who got to know everybody during the time that he lived here. And when we had our meeting at the library, it was our first public meeting a year ago, June 30th for, and Don sat outside and greeted everybody with his wife, which I thought was the perfect job for him. Anyway, I will miss him. He was a great role model.
Any others? Was that just acknowledgement of the service of an individual over a lifetime in this community? We're going to shift gears to for Emma Hunt swearing in, which is the beginning of another career of service to this community and others, I think, Emma. And we've have our city clerk, Joanne Robbins, here in the group. There she is, to do the swearing in. And so I will pass this to our city clerk, Joanne Robbins, to effect the swearing in of our newest Gpac member.
Hi, Emma. I'm Joanne. I'm your city clerk. I'll need you to unmute. So. There you go. Hi. I'm just going to have you repeat after me. I'm going to say this oath in small clips. So every time I pause, you can repeat what I've just said if you don't mind. Okay?
All right.
All right. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I will defend and support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental
reservation.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat the end, please?
Yes, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or evasion. So it's cutting out a little bit.
Okay, sorry about that. And that I will well and faithfully
That I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
that I will well and faithfully
Discharge the duties about which I'm about to enter.
Oh, wait, sorry, it cut out.
Joanne, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, this is why I sent it to Emma. Discharge the duties about which I'm about to enter.
Oh, discharge the duties about which I am about to enter.
That's it. You are now sworn in and a member of Gpac. Congratulations.
Much.
Thank you so much, Joanne.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate that. And Emma, welcome officially to the Gpac. I am always struck by these words. It's a very powerful oath. It's the same oath that you will take if you ever get elected to city council or become our governor. You will say these same words. If you join the military or become president, you'll say words very similar to this, and they have great power. So something to think about as we go ahead here. We've all taken the same oath, and in the end, it means doing our utmost to serve this community and putting that interest first. So Emma, welcome. It's really great to have you. And with that, we're going to turn to maybe something a little more mundane, but also very important, which is Public Records Act and Gpac contact information. And with that, Renata, I will turn it to you.
Thank you, Chair. So recently, staff and members of the Gpac have received requests for contact information for Gpac members. So this is a member of the public asking for this. It's historically been our practice that members of the public can contact staff and we will forward the inquiry or question to the GPAC member in question. This is a little bit twofold. We don't want to necessarily inundate your inbox, but also there is, given that this group is operating or acting as a kind of city endorsed entity, your email inboxes and text messages are subject to the Public Records Act. So this means if there is a public records request for all things relating to housing element, those emails would be subject to search. So this is part of the reason at the beginning of this process, and it was a while now that we first had this conversation, we encouraged GPAC members to create their own GPAC specific email addresses. So not only would it be a single point of contact for you to have all your GPAC related information, but also it would just help with the search for any public records request. So with that, in response to this public inquiry about GPAC contact information, there's a question raised on whether or not the GPAC felt comfortable having their contact information listed on the general plan update website. So this will be an item, up for discussion with the group, but wanted to gauge comfort levels with that and kind of establish a process and procedure.
So we're going to turn this to discussion here, and Anna's got her hand up, and we'll go first.
Thank you. Renata, can you share currently what information is shared on Lafayette's website for City Council and Planning Commission? It's not personal addresses, it's nothing like that, correct?
Correct. So for City Council, there are city-specific email addresses that are created. And then there's no, I don't believe there's an email for planning commissioners created, but similarly, we do forward information to the emails provided by planning commissioners.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out there because that might help form our discussion. Thank you.
Christine and then Susie.
So who is asking for this information? They want all of our emails and our phone numbers, or what information do they want? And who is it?
A member of the public was looking for contact information, so I assume email and phone number.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how many other committees have their personal emails, or the one that's been created for GPAC? What other committees and commissions have that? Just only
so again, just City Council has city provided email addresses.
Okay.
Available
so
on the
everybody else,
website.
they write to the city or they write to one of you for staff, and then you will have a record of it and you will forward it to the individual that's been asked.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Susie and then Carol.
So I like the idea. I created one that was specifically a Gmail for GPAC from the very beginning, because I want people to be able to contact me, but not through my work email or my personal email. It seems pretty safe to have one. And I think as kind of service to the community, it is nice for them to reach us, because I know a little frustration's been in the past of having to go through the Lafayette, blah, 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 and are they being heard? And then who's getting back to them? And it could have been a very simple response. So I think it's a good idea, but again, everybody would have to be comfortable with it. I think it would be definitely something we'd want to keep separate than our regular email and not have phone numbers on there. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't put my phone number, but I think it would be nice on the website to be able to contact a specific person.
Carol?
Well, as a member of the Park and Rec Commission, just our names are listed, as I think all other commissions are, and you go through your staff person. So I'm not sure what you're suggesting, Renata. There are two ways to go. One is have our, as you do with the council, give us a city, lovelafayette.org with our name? Are you suggesting that? Or are you suggesting we all be tied to our staff as Park and Rec commissioners go through Jonathan, our staff? Which one are you suggesting?
So I do not believe that the city would be providing an email address for all GPAC members. So it could be either we maintain the current system wherein folks go through planning staff to contact a GPAC member, or GPAC members can choose to have their email addresses posted onto the website, and those addresses could be GPAC specific email addresses, but those would be the responsibility of GPAC members to create and manage them.
Well, I would not like my personal, having been a commissioner for a long time and some experience with this, but I wouldn't mind my name being put. I think our names are already up there, are they not?
Yes,
Yeah,
they are.
so they can, contact staff, as I guess someone has done already, and then they contact Jim probably, who would pass on the question or the information, such as staff does for the Park and Rec commissioners. But I wouldn't want any of my personal up there because, things, how Lafayette is, when things get controversial, you could really be overwhelmed with emails. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Carol. I got Chris. I don't think we've heard from you yet. Then I've got Christine and then Anna.
Okay. I'm imagining, well, first of all, my personal preference is not to give out my personal phone number. But I would be happy to create a GPAC email. And I assume that just to keep everything, in writing. And then I assume that at committee meetings, we will report our contacts with the public as the activities that we've been part of since the last meeting. Is that how that would work? It just seems like there would be, it would be very, very segregated if there were 11 of us that were being contacted by the same person or any combination. And that if we don't report back to the committee at the next meeting about emails that we've had, email exchanges that we've had, that we would not be aware of what each of us were saying or writing with a member of the public, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we do the activity reports, which should be the next topic on the agenda, but that would
exactly.
Be, yeah. Okay, I've got, so Christine, Anna, and then I see Beth also.
So can we have, I was thinking, if some of us want to have our emails published and some of us don't, can we have like on the screen, when they look our names up, right? They look up Gpac, the .org website, they push the name, and could there be a hyperlink that automatically opens up an email to the city if that's what the member chooses, that it goes to staff first? And then if the people do want to do it individually, could it just click on to their address? So in other words, there's always a response, right? You can always send an immediate email. It just depends on what the member chooses to do with their email, right? Can we do something like that? I think part of the problem is it says, you just click on our name and nothing happens, right? And then you're like, well, who do I write to? So if it would be a hyperlink that either went pre-addressed to staff or pre-addressed to the member they're trying to reach, if that's how they so choose, that would make it easy. So is that possible to do that? Or, because I don't feel comfortable having it up there. I think it's good to have a layer of another set of eyes looking at, correspondence that comes in. Carol's had a lot of experience, and I've seen some things, and I feel like it's just better that it goes through one central location, and it will be tracked that way.
Yeah.
And like what Chris said, it's going to start getting, one person can get a lot of emails, and then no one else gets any either, right? So I don't know, it just seems a little bit more of a better procedure to have it go through staff, but it may be more work. But if that's the case, maybe selecting on the hyperlink, it could go automatically to us, but there'd be a record of it with the city in one form or another. So anyway, my 2 cents. I wouldn't feel comfortable. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. I've got Anna, Beth, and then Sarah and Carol and Stella and Chris. So we've got a lot of views on this. And we have we're only in housekeeping here. So we're going to want to move this along here. So Anna, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I know I'm the liaison from Planning Commission, so I'll try to not give super strong opinion. Other than that, I think we should be mindful of how other committees in Lafayette are doing it, how Planning Commission does it. On Planning Commission, we don't have our personal email addresses. When members of the public choose to send an email, it goes to staff. Staff always sends it out to everyone on the Planning Commission. I think we need to be very mindful of the Brown Act and potential conflict. And we are a committee. We're not individuals. We are a committee. And anything that's going to one committee member should go to all, in my opinion. If someone's reaching out for some other personal reason, people are savvy on social media and can figure out someone's individual email address if it's not related to Gpac, right? That they're wanting to get a hold of somebody. But I think we should keep protocol with how the city is acting with other committees. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. I've got Beth and then Sarah.
Oh, hi, I agree with Anna. I see no reason why this this commission should be any different than any other representative commission for the city of Lafayette.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Sarah and then Carol.
Yeah, I agree, and I wonder why.
I'm sorry, Carol, I had Sarah up first, and then you're on deck.
Oh,
That's okay. I think we're all in agreement. I was just going to kind of second what Chris had said. I worry about the transparency of individual emails, and I agree with Anna. So I'm on board with keeping it through the city.
Okay. All right. Carol and Stella.
I agree, and I wonder why this has even come up, since it's no other city committees do it this way. I would think the Brown Act would. Have you talked to Mala about this? Because if I receive an email and I answer it, what's to prevent that person from sending my opinion to everyone else, or just to one other person collecting their email and sending it to a third person? There's all kinds of Brown Act involved here. So has Mala been asked why this committee would operate differently from all the other committees and commissions in the city?
No, but it would be the case that even if a planning commissioner received a comment from the member of the public and responded, then that member of the public would have their email anyway. So that there's that risk regardless of someone in the public violating the Brown Act inadvertently, but it's the job of a commissioner to be mindful of that and remove themselves from that situation and or remind that member of the public of those rules and requirements. So this was brought up just again as an act of transparency and communication with the public. It sounds like we're not, or I'll let Stella speak, but it was brought up as an option, does not mean that we need to pursue it.
So Stella's got her hand up, and then I'd like to kind of get to a conclusion on this. So Stella, please, and then we'll wrap.
Sure, thank you. I'm in agreement with everyone else. And I think that it's useful perhaps if staff were to forward any of the emails that come in throughout the course of the interval between Gpac meetings that come into, I think it's the general plan at lovelafayette.org email address. I'm fine seeing those as they come in and not having them packaged right before the meeting. So That's just a personal preference, but something I wanted to throw out there. That's how we operate within Transportation Circulation Commission.
Thank you, Selma. And I think for just to chime in here, I will note that as we went through the housing element, there were a number of inquiries directed to staff to reach out to me, and I talked to everyone because I figured that was part of my job. But I did appreciate the fact that they were coming through staff and not just pinging me directly. There was, I don't want to call it a buffer necessarily, but it helped me manage the flow. And I guess for my druthers, I'd say if we're sort of operating consistent with other boards or committees in the city on this, not only the council has their email addresses up, we don't. I think that my sense of this group is that we prefer to keep doing this the way we've done it, which is not to post email addresses on the website, the city's website. And if an inquiry comes in, it goes to staff, and the staff person then reaches out to the corresponding Gpac member, and then we would report as an activity that we've talked to someone at a subsequent meeting. That's kind of what we've been doing it. I don't know if that's my sense of this group. I don't think we necessarily need a motion here to continue existing practice, but I think we should try to wrap this so we can move on to the main entree of this meeting.
Yes.
Carol, I see your hand up, and Sarah, is this brief?
Yeah, I just have a question. Can we get our roster pretty soon?
I think that's going to be discussed here shortly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my sense. Sarah, you had
Just quick comment, looking at the city website for the page for Gpac. I'm, granted I'm multitasking on this call, but it didn't seem like it was very clear on how to contact Gpac. So maybe they could just add a line that included the email address so that people could easily find how to email if they had questions.
City, good idea.
the city.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think this is the consensus of the group. I don't think we need a motion here per se, but it's the process we've had thus far works well. I like Sarah's suggestion. So contact information was another part of this. I know, Carol, you've talked about rosters. I've talked about that with you. I think Renata, there's some follow-up the staff was doing on that. Super brief update on kind of roster update, because we do have there's been some changes obviously in the composition of Gpac here. Sarah, Renata.
Yep. So I was holding off on distributing an updated contact information roster until we had confirmed a new youth commissioner and senior services commissioner, commission representative. So the alternate for senior services is not able to join us. So I will need to work with the commission to nominate a new representative and alternate. So Carol, we will get you your roster shortly. Please be patient as we're trying to coordinate a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Glad we're leaving you the herding cats option here. So much appreciated. With that, then we've gone through our housekeeping. Are there any committee member activity reports to relay since our last session? I've got two here. I've got Susie and then Chris.
So am I first? Okay, so following that, now I kind of been looking at that email differently when I have everybody else's opinion. So my activity report is that Matt Peace and I did meet on Zoom with Cheryl to go over, I guess there'd been some confusion. I hadn't been at the last meeting, just to make sure that she was updated on everything. And Matt mainly handled that. And so we're all up to speed. But now I can see for transparency that it would be probably best to have this handled through the, so that everybody knows. I mean, I'm reporting it now. It was not a major thing. It was nice to be in contact, but that's the activity that would happen.
Okay, thank you. And Chris.
Emma and I had a meeting over the weekend. And it was a great opportunity for me to get to know her. And we found that we had something in common. Both of us ran cross country in high school. Always go for the things in common. Anyway, I'm so happy that that she is on our committee. She, for a person of her age, she has a wide breadth of experience already, and I'm looking forward to working with her.
Great. Thank you very much. And I hope you ran long distances, because that's like the track that Gpac is on. We're not a 50-yard sprint.
That's right.
Would that it were so. Okay, with that, then I think that's all the hands I saw for the activity reports. We're going to move to the main course, which is to talk through the safety element. And with that, there was a staff report that kind of walked through this with some resources attached. And Renata, I'm going to turn this to you then to pick it up.
Thank you, Chair. So good evening, committee members. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you. So this evening will serve as the introduction and kickoff of the safety element update. So at the previous meeting, there was discussion about what's next for land use, or for the General Plan Advisory Committee after the submission of the housing element. And there's discussion of both the land use element and the safety element. And as detailed a little bit more in the staff report and in an upcoming graphic, given the dependency of the land use element on the housing element, it was determined that the safety element would be the next logical option, given it has much clearer parameters. It's not reliant upon the approval of another planning document that's under review with the state. And we are required to update it alongside the housing element, but not as responsive to it. So here's an overview of what all is going on with the planning department currently. So this is, of course, an anticipated draft timeline, but the big pieces here is that here we have the housing element under revision and under review with the state and with the Planning Commission and City Council. And again, the land use element could not be started until that is certified. We anticipate that the earliest that would be certified by the state would be the end of May of 2023. Given this, that gives the Gpac time to work through the safety element and kind of bringing it up to current legal requirements. Gpac also had been considered as part of the downtown specific plan update. So that is still yet to be started formally. And so Gpac's role in that is still yet to be determined, but we'll keep you up to date as the City Council starts and goes through that scoping process to determine what will be happening as part of that downtown plan update and who will be playing what role. So given that we will be starting with the safety element, I'll just refresh from last month that this is the portion of the general plan that focuses on hazard mitigation and provides the background data and then proposed policies to mitigate specific hazards and also implement resilience strategies. So as I mentioned, this is required to be updated with the housing element. And since this current safety element was adopted in 2002, there have been a number of other legal requirements added to this element. So through this update process, we'll take a look back at some of the environmental hazards in the required topics under the safety element, and also the commensurate public safety needs. So our focus here is, yes, there's a wide scope of mitigation actions that can happen, but in this context, we're looking at what actions the city can take towards mitigating these hazards. So that may involve, as I'll speak to later, that may involve cooperation and collaboration with other agencies. However, we need to kind of keep it higher level in that we're looking at city policies. We're not looking at technical specifics about evacuation procedures. We're not rewriting the city's evacuation plan as part of this. However, we will incorporate that information into our recommendations and be looking at the data and all that background information involved in those plans and strategies. And again, similar to the housing element and all the other elements in the general plan, the safety element has implementation measures or mitigation programs. So we have goals, policies, and programs. Unlike the housing element, these are not as typically or generally, they aren't as time bound, because remember the housing element is very unique in that there's an 8-year span under which is being reviewed again, and we're getting checked on every year by the state. That's not the case with the safety element. That doesn't mean we can't have action items and set goals with them of when they should be completed. But it's just a little bit of a different format. And so want to kind of work to reframe the end goal of what we're looking for in those programs, goals, policies, and programs. There are a number of required topics as part of the safety element. So of course, seismic hazards, we live in California. There are a number of faults in the Bay Area region. There are a number of hazards that go with that, including liquefaction potential, landslides, and slope instability, and so forth. Additionally, flooding is a required topic to cover. We have our main flood hazard is the Lafayette Reservoir. So we'll be looking at kind of flood inundation maps and from that and looking at best practices for those kind of mitigations. Again, it's the kind of thing where that is owned and operated by EdMUD. And so there's some limitations to what the city can do, but we'll get into the details of that when that topic comes before Gpac. Of course, wildland and urban fires are front of mind and very important. There's a lot of work and planning going on about wildfire mitigation and preparedness. And then the final required topic within the safety element is climate adaptation and resilience. So this is a new requirement as part of the safety element, and we are required to conduct a vulnerability assessment. So kind of looking forward at what hazards exist and how they might be exacerbated by climate change, and understand what kind of adaptation strategies we can adopt to offset those impacts or prevent their severity from increasing. So new requirements for this element also include that the California Geological Survey and the State Board of Forestry are required to review the draft prior to adoption. So they're going to take a look at it and make sure that we've accurately reviewed and also addressed any and all seismic hazards as well as fire hazards. So that's just one thing to keep in mind with our timeline. I think that review will come after review by Gpac, Planning Commission, and City Council, but long game, we kind of want to keep that in mind. There are some other topics in the current safety element that are not required by state law, including hazardous materials, electromagnetic field hazards, and emergency preparedness, emergency services. So these are important pieces of maintaining a safe city. And so staff does recommend that these remain in. We will revisit those portions of the element to make sure there's not any updates that need to be made. However, there was a suggestion from some Gpac members, I believe, to incorporate a new topic of utility hazards, so specifically water and gas pipe transmission pipeline hazards. So this has been a topic with the city's gas safety task force, which is a group of citizens working to improve natural gas pipeline safety and maintenance. And then, of course, water lines, we want to be mindful of those as kind of flood hazards, and also maintaining those that infrastructure. Again, the safety element will include a significant amount of data and kind of background information. So we'll be laying out where exactly these hazards exist, who are the responsible agencies in general for managing these infrastructure resources. And then, of course, we'll have that climate vulnerability assessment, which is kind of laying out a projected future of these hazards. The Office of Planning and Research, OPR, provides a number of data sources that we would be using. They've been commonly used by other cities in their safety elements. So these are great resources that we'll be referring to as far as our baseline data. In addition to this data, there are a number of existing safety and emergency planning efforts. So first, many folks might not know that Lafayette itself has an emergency preparedness commission. So this is a group of excellent volunteers and emergency preparedness professionals who donate their time to make sure we have an updated evacuation plan. They hold kind of emergency preparedness drills for the community to practice their evacuation routes and all other sorts of activities to make sure folks are primed and ready in the case that an emergency were to occur. So they, I believe just last week, had a meeting, but they meet monthly on the second Wednesday. And I believe they're also still holding meetings over Zoom. So if anybody's interested in attending a session, they are posted to the city's events calendar. The Emergency Preparedness Commission also runs a neighborhood captains program. So I think that means that they'll train you up on how to prepare your neighborhood and community to respond to emergency events. In addition to our local commission, there's the Contra Costa County Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. So this is a large document kind of looking higher level countywide what the threats and safety hazards are. And then there are specific, in a separate volume, specific analyses for annexed jurisdictions, ourselves included, as well as Orinda, Moraga, all of our neighbors, that kind of assesses our current standing for emergency preparedness and hazard mitigation. And there are some recommended actions or policies included in this document that we will also refer to as we progress through these topics. There's the Lafayette has its own wildland fire evacuation plan. So these are the emergency routes that residents can take. This document is prepared by emergency response professionals who conduct these analyses, have experience in how traffic flows and, kind of those dynamic responses. So we will refer to this document and as part of our work. But again, we're probably not going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of the specifics of that, of changing that document as part of this. However, we might have a policy to update it frequently or work with that agency to update it. And again, there are several other efforts ongoing, including PG&E, Diablo Fire Safe Council, the Contra Costa Flood and Water District, and EBMA that have their own preparedness documents that we will visit as part of our tour of topics. So how are we using this information? There's a lot of resources out there, but we want to make sure that we're trying to keep in mind the city's scope. So we will likely need to expand a lot of our policies and programs to incorporate topics and issues that have become more important than they were in 2002. However, if you look at our current safety element, you'll kind of see how these are higher level concepts that the city is taking on. So As I mentioned, there are some documents that recommend policies that you might want to incorporate in response to these hazards. And of course, we can make reference to these other documents like our local hazard mitigation plan, LHMP, as part of our safety element update. And just as a public service announcement, there are several other public safety resources available. So Nixle is our city's emergency text and call alert system. It will alert you not only of any wildfire threats, but also power outages, road blockages, road closures, those kinds of things. Contra Costa has a similar warning system that can alert you if any hazards come about. In the case that you lose power and have a battery radio or a crank radio, Lafayette has its own emergency radio station, AM 1670. And online, we have available a resident's guide to wildfire preparedness and evacuation. Similar resources exist through Firewise and many other agencies, and we're happy to provide that information to folks as requested. Another key component to the safety element is, of course, outreach. So that's been a topic of discussion in the housing element, obviously, but we want to ensure that we have the public involved and informed about what's going into this element. So we want to make sure we cast a wide net and bring people to the table or go to them too, right? And we want to have clear ways that they can get involved and have their input heard. And we have a range of tools available to us. So remember, we have an entire suite of online activities through our Engagement HQ platform that we can use to have folks participate in this process. So a while back, there's a Gpac outreach subcommittee formed, and staff recommends that to have a more focused conversation about this specific topic, that they continue their work developing a more detailed strategy, kind of the who, what, when, where, to make sure that we're reaching our respective constituencies. And that would be something we recommend the committee, or rather, the Gpac discuss tonight, and also follow up with a subcommittee meeting. So this is a generalized summary of the timeline included in the staff report. So we want to cover all the required topics in the safety element, ideally by the certification of the housing element, which will be end of May next year at the earliest. So of course, we're here at meeting 1, but we want to dedicate at least 2 meetings to address fire hazards, given the significance of that risk here, and also incorporate that community input and awareness about this important topic, and then follow along with each topic for a meeting. So at the previous Gpac meeting, there was discussion about going to 2 meetings a month. However, due to staff capacity, we'll have to keep it at 1 meeting a month, and proceed with that timeline and understanding. So it's a hope that over the course of the next 8 meetings that we'll work through and come up with a complete updated safety element. So that is the end of my presentation. I welcome any questions that committee members have for staff. We'll take public comment for initial input on this proposed process. We'd recommend having a discussion about outreach, and then we'd like to bring this back on the regularly scheduled September 20th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. And so we're going to have questions on the presentation or related topic, open it up for public comments, and bring it back for general discussion. I think maybe if I could just to amplify a couple of things that Renata touched on. One is that before this meeting, there's a fair amount of back and forth I had with input from others with staff in terms of just how we manage this upcoming load. The last meeting we talked about the land use element and safety. It just seemed like doing both at the same time, would break the bank in terms of what we could do. So that became a safety first effort. The idea being that by the time everything else gets done, with the housing element, we could be at a point of wrapping up safety to move on to land use. So it just seemed to fit in better by focusing on safety. And as Renata mentioned, I mean, we have terrific staff, but we just don't have enough of them. And so when we started Gpac almost 2 years ago, we had 3, if not 4, planning staff dedicated to us. We were down to 1. So we're small but mighty here, but we have to be, I think, very aware of that. So so that's the focus on safety to start this off. I do want to touch on the outreach in a bit, and so maybe because it may be in the context of this broader discussion. So just so you all know, I did reach out to the individuals who were on the original outreach committee that was formed late last year. And both Beth and Carol have kind of opted to sort of move off that. And so we have a sort of I'm going to put out a reconstituted outreach committee, which will consist of the Gpac members from the neighborhoods and of course our downtown rep as well, or citywide rep, Chris Lee as well. So it's 5, which keeps us within the Brown Act parameters. But still seemed to make sense to have a subcommittee focus on outreach to bring something back to the whole, because we have a lot of other wood to chop on this assignment. So that would be the plan. This committee will actually meet this Thursday just to reinvigorate the effort. I think the hope would be to bring back something to Gpac as a whole, maybe our next session, at least an update, because outreach in this area is going to be very important. So that's just the update on that. So maybe are there questions, clarifications with respect to what Renata presented, or maybe what I mentioned? I see 2 hands up. I got Chris and then Carol, and then one more, and then Christine and then Stella. Chris, why don't you go ahead, please?
Okay. I sent Jim and Renata an email earlier today because I am thinking that there have been a lot of PG&E outages lately, and I think yesterday there were numerous. And judging from some of the next door posts, this is actually kind of a not a safe thing, especially for older people who live by themselves. And I know that that might be a smaller population in Lafayette, but it makes me wonder why we have had so many PG&E outages in the last 2 months or so.
So I'm going to maybe jump in on that. I think that's the topic we can pick up in the utility related hazards section. I think it'll fit nicely in there. So system reliability. So I would maybe just put a bracket on that one, and let's make sure we discuss that when we get to utility.
Yeah, I saw the subheading, and I thought this is perfect for PG&E.
Yeah.
Great. Other question, Chris?
No, I was going to bring up that it should go on the list, but if we can put it under utility hazards, that's perfect.
Thank you, Chris. So I want to focus on any questions, clarifications with respect to presentation and discussion thus far. I've got Carol and then Christine.
I wanted to comment on your outreach discussion.
Please.
Oh, all right. I didn't know whether this was appropriate. All right. It was my understanding that the outreach committee had decided that the commissions would handle their own outreach since they have their own agendas, their own discussion. They represent a point of view. And so that's why I didn't want to be on this outreach committee, because I thought we said that what needs to be decided is how to outreach to the public itself. So I think if they're meeting Thursday, I'd like to find out. I mean, I don't think the outreach committee can decide how each commission is going to reach out to their constituency. That's sort of decided by our agenda and the topic.
Yeah, to clarify.
Make that clear,
Yeah, point is well taken. And I think that's really what the gist of what the outreach committee will be dealing with, because we do have commission members that interact every month with their respective commissions. The real issue is how do you reach out to the neighborhoods and the public at large? So that really will be the thought here, and to build on the work that the original group did back late last year, early this year. And anything else beyond that is sort of premature at this point. I think the idea is for that, we just need to engage with the topic and come back to this group with a set of ideas or recommendations. So Christine and then Stella.
I was just wondering, can Stella go first? I have something I have to take care of. Sorry.
Sure thing.
Thanks.
Stella.
Sure. Hi. I have a question for Renata. So I see that there's mainly one meeting per subtopic or per topic within the element. And so then we would be looking at both all of the background information, but then also any suggested or recommended goals, policies, programs. And so I'm just wondering then, looking at the Orinda plan that you linked in the staff report, is the narrative and the analysis, textual analysis for each of the topics in that plan something that you would be preparing and bringing to Gpac?
That would be the intention. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then that all at the same time. So we have sounds like we'd have a lot of homework in preparation for each meeting to read through all of that narrative background information and understand the recommended or suggested goals, policies, and programs in order to be able to take action at that next meeting.
Correct. Yes. And so that is also kind of an effort to keep our meetings to that, what is it, 2.1 hour threshold is prepare as much as possible and kind of have a higher level discussion. I'll also point out that unlike the housing element topics that we covered in the spring, there's, I think I used the example in the staff report of kind of seismic hazards of, there's not 10 different ways that you could approach making sure a building is structurally sound for an earthquake event. So it's a little more limited in the scope. And so I think it maybe won't be as intensive of research and discussion for some of the topics. Certainly for some, we'll need to work through a lot, but that is the intention.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because I read through that Orinda plan and I was kind of wide-eyed noticing that I think they go through about, 45 pages of narrative and lots of detail about the different risks and hazards before they get into goals, policies, and actions, which I think those take up maybe 6 pages of the report. So it just seemed disproportionate. It seemed like there was a lot of analysis that went into their reports and narrative. That seems really important. And so I guess my one thought is, well, how does Gpac take that all in? How does the public take that all in this current schedule?
So I am open to suggestions and changes, but that is just a draft timeline.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you for explaining it. And I'll wait until we get after public comment to discuss.
Thank you, Stella. Christine, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. So question for Renata and also everybody. The order in which we'll be covering these, it's meeting 2, meeting 3, meeting 4, meeting 5, etc. Now, I know what we did before, Jim. Didn't we take some of the easier things, quote unquote, and bring them forwards to knock those out of the way right away? I was wondering if there is any way we can move some of the more easy items up forward so we can kind of get the hang of it, what we're doing, and then also just, check our boxes off quicker. And then the other thing, and one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because the fire hazard meeting 2 and meeting number 3 fire hazards, both of those meetings, if you can recall, one of our last meetings, Stella had brought up that the fire department or whoever was in charge of releasing new fire data maps was not ready yet. So if we can push that section off later, I was hoping maybe we might get some clarification on when we would get updated maps, or maybe we'll just get updated maps. But I think working on that right now, we don't even have those updated maps. It might be kind of a waste of time. because it may affect what we have, we've done. So if it's possible, I would like to see that those 2 meetings and those topics be pushed towards the end, and that we do the easier stuff first. So that's my 2 cents about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarifications? Don't see any other hands up. With that, I'd like to see if there's any members of the public who might have a comment on the presentation or on this topic of the safety element. We've got the timer up here and we've got a 3-minute limit, but we welcome any public comments or questions.
If you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And we have 1 hand raised with David Clark.
Okay, David, welcome back to Gpac.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here. And Chair Cervantes, I couldn't get your attention earlier, but I did want to say something very quickly about I'm sorry. I'll do this the other order. What I wanted to say about this matter is that the Creeks Committee, as you know, has been working on implementing the downtown, codifying the Downtown Creeks Plan since it was adopted in 2017. We're on the verge of doing that. In fact, we've got a meeting tomorrow night, and I think that all the changes that have been suggested to Chapter 6-18, which is flood damage, which is where a lot of the activity that we've been focused on is located in the Lafayette Municipal Code. That should come up for a vote of the Creeks Committee tomorrow night. Anticipate it will pass. It'll go from there to the Planning Commission, and then from there to the City Council. To be read, it has to be read at least twice. And I think 1 reading will be at the Planning Commission and 1 meeting at the City Council. It's no pun. It's a fluid situation. But the reason I'm telling you this is because as you move forward with the safety element, with respect to, as I said, that chapter is it's the flood damage chapter within the Lafayette Municipal Code. You're probably going to be referring to that chapter, I would think. And I just want you to know that it's a state of flux. If you pick the code up today and read it, that's not what's going to be there in 2 months. So I wouldn't think. So just FYI that at long last, it's a little bit, well, you caught us. We're kind of going so slowly that now you've caught up. So we've got these not necessarily trains on parallel track, but these both things going on at the same time. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's what's going on the codification side with respect to the flood damage ordinance. There's another series of there's a stormwater discharge ordinance that you may wind up looking at as well. We didn't look at that. Most of the changes we made were not in the stormwater discharge chapter. They were in the flood damage. And a lot of those do not have to do with, they're not technically safety measures. They're more, they were setbacks, for example, that were included there. But just FYI, that's going on at the same time. And what I started to say, I didn't know I was going to have time or not, but I did want to say in passing that I was sorry to hear about Don Jenkins. I was very impressed with his participation on this committee and his verve and just sort of his joie de vivre in terms of expressing himself in these meetings. So I was sorry to hear that and wanted to say something quick to that effect. So thank you.
David, thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public?
If you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. There are no other hands raised.
So bring this back to the committee for discussion. I do want to note one thing. This kind of ties into Christine, your comment and what David brought up as well, which is that we do not operate in a vacuum here with the safety element. There are many other jurisdictions that sort of touch on all this, and some of them are internal jurisdictions like the Creeks Commission. And so maybe one takeaway from this discussion might be where we're grouped with I'll follow up with Renata, to maybe see, okay, does the timing work here? When it comes to something like the fire maps, I think they're already maybe 2 years late, or CAL FIRE in terms of updating the maps. So at some point it becomes like a waiting for Godot exercise. Not sure how long if they would report anything by the time we're going to be hopefully done with this at the end of the first quarter of next year. But I think it's worth a look-see as well. We can maybe get an update on that to see, based on best information now, does this timeline work, or maybe should we make some adjustments on it? It's helpful to know about the Creeks Commission. So that would be just one thing I'd want to follow up on with the comments that Christine, you raised, and that what Matt raised. So, sorry, David raised. So maybe with that, for discussion here, I mean, I think the broad concept is to break the safety element into its component pieces, and we focus on each one, or maybe a couple at a session, depending on their complexity. And the idea was to sort of run this through where, in the course of, say, I think it was 9 meetings, which gets us to the end of the first quarter, beginning the second quarter of next year, we can complete this work so that we can move on to the land use element, because the time will be more ripe for it there. So I think one key attribute on this to me is that, in some respects, as I understand it, and Renata, please correct me if I'm wrong, but unlike the housing element, where we were looking at a parcel by parcel view of the city, which is basically street level, we're dealing with this at a much higher level. This is really more broad policy. This is my understanding based on talking to staff. And there's many aspects of what we're doing that tie into other jurisdictions, whether it's EV MUD, CAL FIRE, CON FIRE, and so on. So I think that's the way we would be looking at this. And Renata, I'll look to you to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I understood from earlier discussions, the prior presentation, and the staff report. So I think it's important for us to sort of fix on the altitude that we approach this, because it's a much higher one than we did for the housing element. Renata, I want to make sure that you reality check me on this, but this is my understanding.
Yes, that's correct. And if Gpac members or members of the public have not already reviewed the current safety plan, I would encourage you, or safety element, I would encourage you to do so, to kind of get a sense of the scope of these policies and programs, and as well as the Arinda draft safety element. I think that's a great reference for, kind of the current standards that we're trying to reach as an objective with this update.
And maybe if I could clarify that, I skimmed what Arinda did. It's very impressive. They're obviously overachievers over there. But with respect to, they hired a consultant to do that. So we don't have one in this case, as I understand it.
Not currently, no. We will be contracting out the vulnerability assessment portion of it, but the body of the safety element will be driven by Gpac and staff.
So to clarify then, our focus really is goals, policies, and programs. It's kind of starting point is what was done 20 years ago on this topic, updating it to be consistent with current state law and the facts on the ground as we understand them now versus 2 decades ago. I mean, that's really what we're focusing on. Is that
correct?
Renata, thank you, Renata. Okay. With that, then, I want to turn it to the group for discussion here on the sort of framing of the safety element. I think is the one way to look at that. Stella, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So, just I guess responding to you, Jim, and looking at the Arinda document, I mean, it's very, very impressive. The description is not about parcel level, block level, neighborhood level concerns. It really is citywide, but it's the level of the depth of discussion about all of the parts to the problems that I think is so impressive, and I really think is important. This is our one chance to make our safety element update for maybe the next 20, 30 years. And I think we need to make it comprehensive and thorough, and put good due diligence and effort into it. And so I guess my thought is to all Gpac, read the Arinda document and compare it to the City of Lafayette safety element from 2002. It's really pretty astonishing. difference with just a few paragraphs describing the safety hazard that's the topic at hand versus what Arinda's done. So I guess that's my observation. I think you know where I'm coming from. I think we need to be thorough and conscientious about this really, really important topic to all of our residents. And I agree with Christine and what she said about pushing fire further back. I think that obviously Arinda has a kind of leg up in terms of research and information, in that they have their own fire district that they share with Moraga, and that their chief, I believe, is really at the vanguard of fire science and fire mitigation, wildfire mitigation. So I think they probably leaned on that person a lot and on that district. But when I look at it, I think, well, that's us. We have the same topography. We're pretty much in the same location with just a little shift to the east. And so just looking at how much they put into their fire, I think that we should push our fire further back in the timeline, so that we can hopefully have enough time to really develop that part of it, that section of the element.
Thank you. I've got Christine and then Carol.
Is there any way, so I'm looking at my computer right now and I cannot download any of that Arinda materials, and I'd really like to read that. Can I have those printed out for me? Is that possible? Both of those documents? I feel like that's something I'll be taking notes on.
If anybody else would like a copy, please let me know now.
I would.
saw Jim,
I would.
Carol.
Yeah.
Stella.
I sent a note earlier to that effect. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Thank you
and
very
6,
much.
and
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Carol and then Sarah.
I just have a question. I agree with what Christine and Stella said, but is there some reason that staff put the fire hazard up front we aren't aware of?
I can answer that. So I took a whack at this initially and sent it to Renata. It was frankly, fire is the biggest topic we've got, I think. We have a big earthquake tomorrow. I'll change my view on that, I think. But it was basically fire is a key topic. And so that just seemed logical to start there. Points raised by Christine and Stella, I think, are well taken. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we could take I think the great thing about this discussion is it's sort of like putting out there this timeline and getting people's takes on it. And I think there's some really good suggestions that have been offered here. So I don't think anyone is wedded to doing fire first or reordering the topic array somewhat. Likewise, David Clark's comment with respect to creeks. I mean, we may want to adjust that too, Frank, the flooding component. So that's the background.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think that is a good idea, because to put it off a little bit, get our feet wet, because the fire hazard might end up taking a very long time. So if we put it right in the beginning, I think we could get pushed out of our timeline.
It's a possibility. Thank you, Carol. I've got Sarah and then Beth.
I think I was kind of agreeing with that, but then I'm thinking about it, and we're not actually looking at this. We're looking at it in end of September and in end of October, right? But given that we're going to have the subcommittee on setting up meetings for the community, it might make sense, because I have a feeling the community is going to want to weigh in on this. Mm-hmm. And so we want to have a chance to outreach to the community. That's my thought.
Which might be another good argument for pushing back fire a bit as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, I'm wondering if the public is going to wonder why we are pushing fire back, since I think they may think it's the most important.
Well, I also wanted to ask about something, and this is a little farther down on the agenda. Maybe it's not relevant at the moment, but under staff updates, it says Wildfire Town Hall, August 25th. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe I missed. That's not us though, right? That's not the subcommittee. It's totally separate.
Yes, that's being put on by our Emergency Preparedness Commission.
Might be interesting to see what that looks like.
And that's why it's on the, the updates, to encourage folks to attend.
Yeah. Thank you. Christine?
So the other reason I thought about moving this, this whole plan around a little bit is there something in here that anyone thinks that we can move forward that would be, I mean, I feel like too, it kind of would be it's not practice, but I think the fire one is such a really, really, really important one that we got to get right, the first time, hopefully. That it would be kind of good if we practice on something a little less complicated. So, like maybe even landslides and unstable slopes, if we move that one forward, for example, because it seems like not that much has changed with the slopes and land and whatever right now. So, I mean, could we pick something out tonight that we might want to move forward?
I'm going to, I think there's some deliberation to think through how these pieces move, and there's some interrelationships with work that other bodies are doing. So what I would say is, look, points well taken on the fire side, and maybe also creeks as well. There may be other areas as well that touch on work with other jurisdictions where we don't want to affect the timing. So I don't think we need to, as a group of 11 or whatever it is, work through revising the schedule. I don't think that's productive, frankly, but the point's well taken. And I think if there's a logic to pushing back fire that several folks have commented on.
Okay, so who would change that then? Staff's going to do that and then make a recommendation, or?
So basically the way, I mean, honestly, the first cut of this is something I sort of put together. I got Matt's input, got some input from Stella, talked to staff. That's staff reworked it. So that's, I just see you just doing the same thing. But I think the feedback from this group has been super helpful. So that was, I think, the idea of talking through the timeline. So we all had a sense of where we were going with this exercise.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Beth, and then Stella.
Hi, thanks. I'm wondering about access to experts, because I pulled up the Orinda plan in it, and like Stella said, it's very detailed, very good, but certainly people have a lot more experience in understanding fire, earthquakes, and water than I do, even than I would from reading or hearing one particular group. So will people be presenting this to us so we can make informed decisions?
We certainly can bring in specialists. That was going to be the plan for the fire hazards, for sure. And we can look into other experts as needed on certain topic areas.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. And Stella.
Oh, thank you. So just something I didn't mention, I think for the electric, or for the utility hazards and transmission pipeline risks, I would suggest adding electric distribution lines. We did have, that was the cause of the Lafayette fire that we had in 2019. It's just the PG&E pole that came down.
Okay. All right, that's good. Thank you. Are there any other, I don't see any other hands up. Let me see if I can recap what we've talked on here and make sure I've got this right, which is, based on the feedback, it makes sense to sort of take a look at the timeline here and maybe readjust the scheduling of, or sequencing rather, some of these topics. And, fire, if we move it back, by the time we get to it, fire season now is maybe 12 months a year, but we're looking at a document that's going to be going out for a decade or two. So I think we want to try to do our best job as we can on it. So maybe pushing back fire might make some sense, and maybe readjusting some of the items on the calendar as well. So that'll be the work to do that. We'll work on with staff in advance of this next meeting. And I think the idea of maybe taking a topic that might be, I'm trying to find the right word, a little less meaty than fire, for example, to kick us off might be a good way to sort of handle this. I'm also conscious of the broader timeline that we're looking at, which is the idea being to try to get through the safety element sort of in the time frame we got here, because we'll want to pick up land use probably in the second quarter of next year. So I think we want to be mindful of there are other kind of pretty important elements out there that we need to be addressing. And, you know, if we're dealing with safety at a very high level, you know, we don't need to sort of have a replay of the housing element discussion, which took us like a year and a half, I think. So we'll see how that all plays out. Any other discussion on the safety element update? I think you've all given me and staff some homework to do. So points well taken. That was very, very helpful. Thank you. So maybe with that, we will move to staff updates, including the Wildfire Town Hall. So Renata, why don't you take that, please?
Sure. So the first item is actually the Bart transit-oriented development standards. So this was scheduled for a planning commission hearing last night, but unfortunately, due to the power outages, they've removed the item, just given that so much of the city was unable to participate. The item was continued to a special meeting, and it was up for this 22nd, you said? So next Monday. Yes, this coming Monday. So the staff report and materials will be available on the city's events calendar if you would like to join and hear the discussion or provide comment. And then the second item, the Wildfire Town Hall. So this is an event put on by our Emergency Preparedness Commission. So it'll be over Zoom on the 25th. If you would like to join, I would encourage Gpac members as well as members of the public to attend. I'm not entirely clear on what the agenda is for this session, but I hope that there will be community concerns raised that we can then draw upon for our next item, which is the safety element. And then the last, yes, Carol?
Yeah, where is the link for that?
It's on the city's event calendar online.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and Stella, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, there was one last month, I think, also. And so that might be worth also, I guess, pointing Gpac to. I don't remember the date, but I know that council member Quorum hosted it. And there were presentations by a number of entities, the Lumber and Desert. I think that's also the Emergency Preparedness Commission chair. And I know Contra was there. Can't remember now who else, but
okay,
it's worth watching.
Yeah.
So maybe Renata, if I could just, if we could just have a separate email to Gpac with the link to the replay and the Zoom link for the upcoming session, that would be very helpful and timely.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great, because my question was exactly the same as Carol, I think, which is like, what's different about this upcoming one from the one that just happened? So I'll just have to go to find out. Thank you.
Sure thing. And the last item is that we have a vacancy on our planning commission. So we are recruiting for land use professionals who are Lafayette residents to participate in our decision-making process. Anna, do you want to add anything about all the joys of serving on planning commission?
It's awesome. And if you're interested, or if you know someone who is interested, please encourage them to apply.
So duly noted that the planning commission is trying to raise Gpac for members. So
I mean, just saying, you
It's
can
a group
still be a
effort.
liaison to Gpac. You can have my position. I will be fine with that.
that's a very generous offer.
So you can still be involved.
So if you are interested in, if you or someone you know is interested in applying, you can direct them to me, or I believe there's an application form and instructions on the city's website. And I think it's been going out in the weekly roundup newsletter as well.
Great.
Those are all my updates for now.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you. I don't think we have it. Should we open it up for public questions or comments on that? Or is that, I'm not sure, that's not a discussion topic, so.
No, I don't think we usually open for
Okay.
public comment for this.
So I will note that we've gone through the agenda. The goal is to sort of get to, I think it's to not exceed 2.1 hours per feedback from this committee. We are short of that. So I think I do want to note that maybe we'll bank the half hour saving to apply to a future meeting. Unless we just continue on here for just a general discussion, but I think we're done. So if there are no other comments, questions on the staff updates, then we really are done. And I will adjourn the meeting. I'd like to adjourn the meeting in memory of our departed member, Don Jenkins, and his legacy of service to this community. And, we will be, many of us in this community, trying to grapple with the loss of someone who made such a contribution. Carol, you've got your hand up.
Yes, isn't Gpac missing a member too?
Yes, we have a vacancy for the Senior Services Commission representative.
The alternate did not want to step in.
Correct.
Also, they need a representative and an alternate.
Correct. So I'll be working with Jonathan to find a replacement member.
Okay, and I'd like to welcome Emma Hunt to the Gpac community.
Thank you. Well taken. With that, thank you all very much. I just want to, I think reflecting on the contributions that different people make here, and as we've seen some transitions with Don's departure and Namratha moving on to college with Emma joining us, the amount of time that everyone spends on this is really of long run value of the community. We're looking at something that was done 2 decades ago and will likely be maybe in use for the next 2 decades. So we'll have another commission, not with me, on it at that point. Emma, you have your hand up, and I want to make sure I give you time here. You're on mute, Emma.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. I met a couple members and everyone has been super welcoming and very supportive.
Great.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Good. Good spirit. Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned.